feeling powerless and helpless and hopeless. I don't ever want to feel like this again. I'm going to make a point of making better plans for our future.
I was under the bridge this morning at 6:30 when they showed up to put us out.
And by Saturday, by Saturday evening, I was evicted. They got me out of the house that fast. As soon as she died, I was gone. So I was homeless since then.
Imagine your home, your anchor, suddenly gone. Not a nightmare, but reality. In Cincinnati, lives are unraveling, betrayed by a system they once trusted.
We run into people that throw stuff at us. We ran into people out.
This isn't just hardship. It's a society falling apart. Cincinnati's crisis mirrors the struggles of America itself. Look closer. What does it reveal about us?
My situation basically is, right now I'm in a situation where my living situation is volatile day to day. Like I could be out on the street today, tomorrow, whatever. And I'm just between jobs because the factory laid off, so I'm panhandling until I can find something.
In Cincinnati's shadowed streets, homelessness weaves a tapestry of heartbreak that statistics only faintly trace. Each year, more than 6,000 people in Hamilton County confront this merciless reality, their lives torn apart by forces often beyond their control.
Right now I have a meth addiction, but I'm getting on my way with trying to fight it, and I am fighting it.
In 2024, 232 families, parents shielding trembling children, were found unsheltered, curled up in cars or beneath the cold steel of bridges. Over 8,000 children have tasted the sharp sting of having no home, their innocence marred by instability. Most chillingly, the number of those living outside shelters has doubled in just 2 years, a muted howl from a system that seems to have abandoned its own. Yet, these stark figures capture only a sliver of the crisis's depth. The hidden homeless dwell in the margins, crowding onto friends' couches, squeezing into relatives' basements, or turning vehicles into fragile havens.
Yeah, it's just like some guy like over by the train just punched me in the face.
Their suffering, though uncounted in official reports, carries the same crushing weight. Kevin Finn, president of Strategies to End Homelessness, revealed that many families delay seeking help for up to a year, their pride or despair cloaking them in silence. The true magnitude of this tragedy likely looms far larger than any ledger dares admit, a quiet rebuke to a city that claims progress. This isn't a fate reserved for the chronically destitute anymore. Homelessness now stalks the lives of working families, retirees, and even those with college degrees. A single mother juggling 2 jobs, a retired teacher tethered to a shrinking pension, a young professional blindsided by a medical bill, each stands one misstep away from ruin. In Cincinnati, where rents have surged 20–30% in 3 years while wages stagnate, stability has become a cruel illusion.
I lost my house after I had my second baby because I had a spot, I had a spot in the job and everything, but when I had my second baby, he was in the ICU. So I was working up until I had him, and then my landlord was selling the house I was staying in, and then so he gave me time, but with my baby in the ICU, I kind of not stopped working and then just stayed right there with him.
As one advocate starkly warned, a single unexpected bill can thrust anyone onto the street. How close are you to that one bill that could unravel everything? The question lingers, heavy with unease. This crisis no longer skulks in Cincinnati's urban heart. It's creeping into suburban streets, where families once felt untouchable. The pain isn't just in the numbers, but in the lives they represent, lives like yours or mine, unraveling under a system that's buckling. What does it mean when a city's promise of security crumbles for so many? The answer demands we look beyond the surface to the roots of this spreading despair. These are not isolated stories, but a collective warning, a signal that something is deeply broken. So, what forces are driving this relentless tide? What's pulling so many into the void? Cincinnati's safety net, designed to catch those who falter, is unraveling, its threads worn thin by overwhelming need. The Central Access Point CAP Helpline, a lifeline for those engulfed in despair, fielded 4,731 calls from household heads in 2024, each a plea for refuge. Yet, it could only place 47% of these callers into shelters or housing programs, leaving over half to face the bitter cold of the streets. Shelter Diversion, a cost-effective program offering financial aid and counseling to prevent homelessness, kept just 106 families housed last year, a faint whisper against the roaring tide of desperation. Tiny home pilots, though innovative, remain fleeting sparks, too small to pierce the darkness of this crisis. As one stark report concluded, our safety net is fractured, reactive, and utterly overwhelmed. Certain groups bear the crushing weight of this failure. Single mothers, often women of color, navigate a brutal labyrinth of poverty with their children ensnared in its sharp edges. Elderly retirees, their life savings eroded by relentless costs, are forced from homes they built over decades. Those emerging from prison, addiction treatment, or foster care are all but funneled into homelessness, handed scant support to reclaim their lives. Low-wage workers, servers, cleaners, caregivers balance on a knife's edge, where a single missed shift or unexpected bill can send them plummeting. How can a society stand by as its most fragile are left to shatter? The question cuts deep, demanding an answer we can't ignore. These are not people who dodged responsibility. They labored, believing in the promise of a society where hard work secures a future. Yet, they've been betrayed by a system that prizes profit over dignity. A single mother working 60 hours a week, unable to pay rent, isn't failing. She's been failed by a society that has lost its moral compass. A retiree evicted after a lifetime of service isn't an anomaly. It's a symptom of our collective neglect. What does it say about us when dedication no longer guarantees a roof overhead? The truth lies not just in flawed policies, but in the deeper fractures of our shared conscience, cracks we've turned away from for far too long. This crisis isn't born of chance, but of choices. Choices that expose families to ruin, dim children's futures, and starve hope. The holes in our safety net are widening, and those falling through are not faceless strangers, but neighbors, friends, people who could be us. The system's failures are stark, underfunded programs, overstretched resources, and a lack of will to prioritize prevention over reaction. Cincinnati's most vulnerable are slipping through because we've allowed the net to fray, because we've accepted a status quo that leaves so many behind. So what forces are ripping this safety net apart? What unseen currents are pulling so many toward the abyss? Homelessness in Cincinnati isn't a sudden deluge, but a smoldering ember fed by economic, social, and systemic failures that choke the vulnerable. At its heart lies a merciless economic truth. Housing costs have surged while wages stagnate. In just 3 years, rents in Cincinnati spiked by 20-30%, devouring incomes and forcing half of low-income families to spend over 50% of their earnings on rent. Affordable housing, homes within reach of modest paychecks, has all but vanished, leaving a staggering 40,000 unit shortfall in the region. For too many, survival has become a cruel equation that no longer balances. Health and mental health crises only deepen the wounds. Long-term care for mental illness or addiction is scarce, especially in suburban areas stripped of services. Unaddressed trauma, depression, or substance use can unravel lives, leading to lost jobs, evictions, and street corners. The toll is brutal. Homeless children face chronic illnesses at double the rate of their housed peers, their futures shadowed by instability. What happens to a child whose only constant is uncertainty? The answer haunts us all. Personal shocks, divorce, domestic violence, abrupt layoffs act like landmines, shattering even the steadiest lives. Without family or friends to lean on, these blows become catastrophic. Social isolation, a quiet plague in our fractured world, leaves countless individuals adrift. A mother escaping abuse, a worker discarded after decades, a veteran wrestling with PTSD, each is left to sink in a system that promised safety. How many more must fall before we mend the net? Systemic failures only widen the abyss. Weak tenant protections allow landlords to hike rents or evict with impunity, leaving tenants powerless. Federal funding, though significant, often pours into emergency shelters rather than prevention, ignoring evidence that programs like shelter diversion, costing just $1,650 per person, are far more effective and economical than post-homelessness aid, which costs $4,700 per person. As strategies to end homelessness warned, resources chase crises, not solutions. Worse still, criminalizing homelessness, finding panhandlers, arresting those sleeping in parks, only tightens the noose, trapping people in a cycle of despair. This isn't just Cincinnati's burden, it's a national scar, a grim reflection of the struggle with homelessness in America. The roots run deep, tangled in greed, neglect, and misplaced priorities. Yet, every city has a choice to confront its failures. Cincinnati's crisis demands more than sympathy. It requires action. So, what steps is the city taking to douse these flames? Are its efforts enough to halt this relentless spread? Cincinnati's leaders haven't turned a blind eye to the homelessness crisis, but their efforts feel like bandaging a gaping wound. In 2024, Ohio allocated $1.1 million to local programs and $2.1 million to study eviction patterns, tentative steps toward understanding the root causes. The city has transformed old buildings into daytime shelters, offering a fleeting haven for those with nowhere to turn. Collaborations with universities aim to measure the impact of programs, signaling a commitment to smarter solutions. Yet, despite these heartfelt attempts, they barely scratch the surface of a crisis engulfing thousands. Take the tiny homes pilot, a beacon of hope, blending stable housing with job training and counseling. But with only a handful of units, it's a faint flicker against a tidal wave of need. Shelter diversion, which keeps families housed through targeted aid, has proven its cost effectiveness, but it reaches only a small fraction of those at risk. As one weary advocate put it, we're testing answers, but we're not building them big enough. The $4.7 million in federal funds, while substantial, is stretched thin across a region where thousands teeter on the edge of survival. The painful reality is that these efforts, however sincere, are outmatched by the crisis's relentless scope. Policies remain largely reactive, dousing fires rather than preventing them. Prevention strategies, such as eviction aid, cost less and work better than emergency shelters, yet they remain underfunded. Meanwhile, the 40,000 unit affordable housing shortage festers with no bold plan to bridge it. Cincinnati pours millions into glitzy stadiums and upscale condos, yet struggles to house its most vulnerable? Can a city that builds monuments to wealth find the courage to shelter its fragile souls? The answer will define the heart of Cincinnati's legacy. This crisis isn't just about money, it's about priorities. Every dollar spent on luxury while children sleep in cars is a choice. Every policy that favors reaction over prevention is a missed opportunity. The tools exist, but the will to wield them at scale remains elusive. What would it take for Cincinnati to choose people over profit? The path forward demands more than patchwork responses. It requires a reckoning with what we value as a community. So, what bold steps can we take to pull back from this brink? What vision might light the way? To mend the deep wound of homelessness in Cincinnati, we need fierce resolve today and a bold vision for tomorrow. Immediate action can spark hope. Expanding Housing First programs, offering stable homes without preconditions, has slashed homelessness by 20% in cities courageous enough to commit. Doubling down on eviction prevention through emergency rental assistance could spare thousands from the abyss of despair.
Because he saw a line.
Scaling tiny home villages, infused with job training and mental health support, delivers not just shelter, but a chance at dignity. These aren't pipe dreams. They're proven solutions. Yet, they hinge on funding and, more crucially, the audacity to act. Long-term change demands we uproot the crisis's core. Cincinnati must enact unyielding rent control and eviction protections to shield families from ruthless landlords. Channeling resources into community mental health and addiction treatment, especially in overlooked suburban areas, could prevent countless lives from spiraling. The 40,000 unit affordable housing gap calls for relentless action, public-private partnerships to build homes for those priced out of their own city. Forging a united front among government, nonprofits, and businesses could wield a formidable force, harnessing each sector's strengths to outsmart this crisis. These aren't mere options. They're the bedrock of a city that refuses to abandon its own. Change, however, demands more than dollars. It requires raw courage. Courage to challenge a market that feasts on scarcity, to elevate people above profit, and to admit that homelessness is our collective shame, not a personal failing. It's a mirror exposing our priorities, forcing us to confront what we've become. Picture Cincinnati, where no child huddles under a bridge, where every family has a key to turn. What would it take to forge that city? The answer lies in our willingness to defy complacency, rewrite policies, and extend hands instead of turning away. Every dollar spent, every law reshaped, every life lifted pulls us closer to that horizon. But solutions alone won't redeem us. They must be paired with a reckoning. What does this crisis reveal about who we are and who we aspire to be? Homelessness in Cincinnati isn't just a policy failure, it's a moral one, a test of our humanity. The tools to end it, housing first, prevention, systemic reform, are within reach, but they demand we choose compassion over indifference. We must build not just homes, but a community that says no one is disposable. The path is clear, yet it's ours to tread. Will we muster the strength to meet this moment, or will we let the fractures deepen, swallowing more lives? The choice defines us. This isn't about distant ideals, but about tangible steps. Steps we can take now, together. Every voice raised, every resource redirected, every policy reimagined chips away at the crisis. Cincinnati can be a beacon, a city that proves homelessness isn't inevitable. But it starts with us, with our refusal to accept a world where neighbors sleep in the cold. So, what's stopping us? What will it take to build a future where every Cincinnatian has a place to call home? I never imagined I would become someone who spent time in shelters, not as a resident, but as a volunteer. Years ago, I met a woman named Lydia. She had 2 kids, worked part-time at a diner, and smiled like she didn't know she was homeless. But she was. She and her children had been living in her car for 19 days. I asked her what she missed most. She didn't say bed or a shower. She said, I miss silence. I miss safety. That stayed with me. Because what is a home if not the place where silence and safety meet? We talk a lot about homelessness in America as if it's just a byproduct of poverty, but it's also a reflection of our values, what we tolerate, what we prioritize, and who we're willing to forget. People often ask, why don't they just get a job? But how do you fill out a job application without an address? How do you sit through an interview if your shoes are wet from sleeping under a bridge? Let's be honest with ourselves. Homelessness is not just the result of personal failure. It's a mirror. It reflects the places where our economy, our healthcare system, our housing policy, and our very compassion have come undone. So, what will we do? Will we look away or will we look closer? And if we're brave enough to look, what might we be willing to change? Have we become a society that lets its people freeze on the streets? Homelessness in Cincinnati isn't just a problem for the few, it's a moral challenge for us all. Single mothers, retirees, and children sleeping under bridges aren't outliers. They're warnings of a system cracking at its core. If we ignore them, those cracks will swallow more lives, maybe even yours. Ask yourself, if you lost your home tomorrow, who would catch you? If the answer is no one, we've already failed. Yet, it's not too late to change. Cincinnati can rebuild not just bricks and mortar, but a community that says no one is disposable. It starts with us, with our voices demanding better, our choices to act, our refusal to turn away. Donate, volunteer, speak out. Every small step builds a city where no child shivers in the dark. This isn't about charity, it's about who we are. Will you help write this new chapter for Cincinnati, one where every life finds a home? Let's make sure the next story is one of hope, not shame. Conclusion. Cincinnati stands at a crossroads, not just in urban planning, but in collective conscience. The rise in homelessness isn't just a statistic, it's a symptom, a warning, a plea. We are long past the time for surface solutions. We need courage, the kind that listens instead of judges, that builds instead of blames. That asks, what kind of city, what kind of country do we want to be? If the American dream means anything anymore, then it must include the right to sleep safely, to be seen with dignity, and to never be forgotten. Because homelessness in America is not just their problem, it's ours.